All right. Well, welcome everyone to this edition, the 16th episode of Real Talk the Pendulum. My name is Dr. Serena Wadhwa, and I am your second host, primary host, whatever you want to call that. Pramila is obviously the host because she's the one that graciously gives me permission to do this. And unfortunately, she was unable to be here tonight. So I have taken the Wizard of Oz control panel from her, and I'm excited to introduce my guest for tonight. Very interesting background. And Matt, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, but I'm going to put um, the slide just with your information. But basically, we talked a little bit a while back about what the pendulum is about, and you had shared kind of your history and your story and how it brought you into this field. And I mean, just if you don't mind sharing, like how did you get into counseling and what made you decide to become a counselor or actually an LCSW? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Serena. It's great to be here. So I'm a career changer. I was previously in a past life working in book publishing, sales and marketing, doing a lot of copywriting. It was a great job, and I worked with great people. I couldn't have asked for a better place to be at that time in my life. But I realized fairly quickly after I started there that I didn't want to work in business for my career. And then not long after this, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was lucky as I was so young at the time. I was in my late 20s, and the type of cancer I had was so aggressive that I responded really well to treatment. And after I went into remission, I reassessed things, of course, and I realized when I was asked what I wanted, and the key thing with the question that was asked to me was, the person said, "Don't worry about the time or the money or the energy. Just tell me what you want." And I sat with it for a second and realized I now wanted to work with other cancer fighters. And he told me, then you should look into social work. And so
Oh,
less than a year later, I was enrolled at Loyola University Chicago. Um, and so I've since called my cancer the scariest and best thing that's ever happened to me.
yeah. Wow. Well, that's a huge thing. And so a survivor, basically. And it's interesting to, wow, I really appreciate you sharing that too, because that's, a lot of times people just don't know what to say when they hear that
Mhm.
from somebody. And so I'm curious, how do you handle that when you share that with people and they don't know what to say?
Well, I let them know that they don't need to say anything specific, that that's not
Yeah.
their responsibility. It's my story and I own it. And I don't want them to feel like they have to handle me with kid gloves. And
Yeah.
that's why I like to call it both the scariest and best, because yeah, I recognize it was hard.
Yeah.
But I shift and I recognize the path it put me on. And I just like to let people know it's similar to when I've counseled cancer fighters who are newly diagnosed and they're struggling because everyone in their life is reaching out and saying, "What can I do? What can I do?"
Mm.
And they then end up feeling responsible for them. And I tell them, you just let them know, thank you for the offer. You don't need to do anything right now. I'll let you know. And I take the same approach with people, because you're right. A lot of people don't know how to feel or how to respond, how to support me in the moment.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, congratulations. Is that like an appropriate thing to say? And okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a
Okay.
congratulations
Yeah.
on your survivorship, for example. Yeah, I think that's totally appropriate.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay, great. Because I know people like will say things like that. And then I've had people tell me, like, is that okay to say? And I'm like, well, did you ask the person if that was okay? I mean, I don't, you have to ask the person if they're okay with that. They will usually let you know if that's all right with them or not,
Right. Yes.
and I think
Oh,
that's important. Go ahead.
sorry. I'm sorry. My dog is getting.
Oh, is that your, okay. That's okay. He's agreeing.
Yeah. But please go ahead. What were you
I was
saying?
going to say, it's just, oftentimes people, rather than go to the person themselves, will, find out from maybe 50 other people what to say or what to do. instead of going to the actual person that they're trying to help or trying to offer support to.
Yes.
And you found that to be the case as well.
Yeah, sometimes it can be that way.
It can be
Mhm.
that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, talk a little bit about, that's one of the things that you did share with me as well, was this experience of yours. And being that it was the scariest and a life-changing experience for you and got you into the field, you also mentioned that it's something that made you reassess your life. And in some respects, it sounds like, it really helped to kind of bring more meaning, from the book publishing business that you were in. And so I'm curious, what kind of things have you learned in terms of making meaningful choices, both as, as a person, as a human first, right? And then, how do you translate that into helping others figure that out for themselves?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that comes to mind is I practice the same technique with my clients who are struggling with knowing they need a change, but not knowing what they want. And I ask them to do the same thing that worked for me. And I really stress, don't think about the time, the money, or the energy. And then also, I really stress too, when it comes to making meaning, I always stress, do you feel like you deserve the change? Do you feel worthy
Mm,
of the change?
mm,
And I think that's a lot of the meaning that we all deserve to practice in our lives is it's so easy for us to be afraid of change and feel like it's just not possible for us.
mm.
And then we create all those barriers, the time, the money, the energy. It's just not possible. And if we can just get past that and give ourselves permission to get past that and feel worthy of it, things do line up. I found that happen with me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And, I've shared, I think, a little bit about my own, having some of my own struggles. And, not until I really just kind of let go of that control of it. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is at least for my own story and experience was that once I was able to be like, okay, obviously I'm not going to have control over this. And so I need to let that go and just kind of let it unfold the way it unfolds and just kind of separate the two, so to speak, right?
Yes, right.
And so it really made a significant difference and change in my life too. I mean, like what you were saying, it really shifted a lot as well. And so it sounds like a very similar um, connection there that was made too.
Absolutely. And I really like the point you make that with control. I think
Yeah.
that we're trying to control more when we hold ourselves back
Yes.
because we're scared. Understandable.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
That's, three really valuable things I learned about change. It can be hard, it can be scary, it can take a lot of energy. I learned that from somebody else. And I always stress that with my clients to normalize it. But I also don't, I never discourage change either.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, because we need that, right? In
Mhm.
order to kind of evolve and what is it? Self-actualize, right? Become the best
Yes.
versions of ourselves. I mean, that's how what is it? Caterpillars emerge as butterflies. There's lots of
Mhm.
change, and I'm sure it's not a very smooth transition that they go through. So
Absolutely.
so it reminds me of that, that's what I'm reminded of, that kind of metamorphosis almost, that happens in a cocoon. And sometimes it feels that way and it could feel very isolating and just different, like, okay, I don't know if anybody else kind of knows what this feels like, but this is kind of what the experience is like, so to speak. So I'm curious then too, because you mentioned and I really like the fact that you mentioned that you kind of take what worked for you and you apply it with your clients to kind of see how it fits for them and work through it with them as well. Um, and oftentimes find that, the process that can be manageable, that there are ways to apply it, right? And then you mentioned that, there were like all these different barriers that come up, like we put a lot of, and we do a lot of it to ourselves anyways, right? So it's kind of
Yes.
like a lot of things. And what have you found, maybe in your personal experience, if you're okay sharing that, but also just like with your clients, what have you found to be like some of the more significant barriers? You mentioned like, not giving ourselves permission as one.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit more first, like about what that means, like not giving ourselves permission? How do you kind of define that and see that?
I think that the bottom line is sometimes I think we have to feel the fear and the unworthiness and do the thing anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it helps to have a support system of people in your life who support you, who want to see you change in positive ways, want to see you do well. But I also think sometimes that's inevitable that we just need to go for it. And um, that doesn't mean we can't prepare.
Mm,
We can,
mm,
I learned that a little bit of anxiety is normal, especially around change, and anxiety can help us plan and prepare and take things seriously. So I'd be more concerned about someone who is making a career change, for example, if a client I was supporting was going through that and they weren't feeling anxious at all. And so what other barriers, when I think about that, I think again, I go back to at the heart of it, I think a lot of people will say, it costs too much money. I don't have the time. There's too many reasons I have to stay in this current job, even though I'm not happy in it. And at the heart of it, though, that's why I asked the question, so that if it's a problem, if it's something that's going on, we can address it. Is, do you feel like you deserve it? If you can just separate yourself from the worries around the time, the money, the energy, do you feel like you deserve it? That's
mm.
probably the biggest barrier I find that people create for themselves.
Yeah, is not feeling worthy of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And how do you, that's there's a lot of people that experience that. Just not feeling worthy of whatever it is, the abundance or, a treat, a significant change, something positive, particularly if they have had a lot of suffering. I think that's something I've also seen too. And I know I've experienced some of that myself in my own history. And, I've had to work through that as well. I'm wondering, like, how have you seen, like, how do you manage that, both from, realistically, from a life experience perspective, and then also from a spiritual perspective, because there's kind of both sides to that, right? This, how do you feel that you're worthy enough, yet not get arrogant and narcissistic about it.
Absolutely. Well, that's something when you had sent me some of the questions you might ask me,
Mhm.
and I was thinking about them in advance. And um, humility, I've learned from one of my
Mm.
teachers, is an acquired taste, and
Oh,
no one likes getting feedback.
yeah,
And we definitely can. We get criticism from other people. It's easy to see it as punitive and not constructive,
yeah,
especially if we're in a vulnerable place. Going through change, we're going to feel vulnerable.
yeah.
And so I think as long as we're practicing gratitude along the way, that's really important. And then what I thought about was I had the privilege of working with people in recovery. I
Mm,
facilitated an intensive outpatient program, substance use treatment group for 4 years. And um, a lot of my clients would come in, and of course, I would always be suggesting, are you going to meetings outside of this group? Because this group only lasts for X amount of days. You need to have a plan for your ongoing support and accountability. And a lot of them wouldn't want to go to 12-step meetings, for example, because they would say, I don't believe in God. And I would respect that. And I'd say, if it doesn't fit with your belief system, don't make your higher power God.
mhm.
Make it a group, make it a community, make it something that's just bigger than yourself. And I learned that from one of my other teachers too, who's done work with people in recovery for a long time. And I think that when we keep that in mind, no matter how confident we get in our skills, no matter what life experience we bring to the table, I think that that helps us stay grounded,
Yeah.
helps us remember that we're going to keep learning, which is the best way to avoid burnout. And that definitely avoids arrogance and narcissism. It's like,
Yeah, that's a really great point. Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up and, sharing that, because it is a great reminder to just recognize that, even when you're struggling or you're so myrtled in all of the, the ego talk, right? The inconveniences and the worry and the stress, which is all ego talk, the I kind of stuff, right? And that when you're really doing work that is helpful to other people, that's really the crux of it. That's the basis of, that, okay, but you are also benefiting other people, and all that inconvenience and worry stuff, that's just like the minor stuff. It's really thinking, like you said, about the bigger picture, and recognizing that too. That's a really great way of framing it. So, and recognizing that there is a bigger picture with it too, and how that can be helpful. When you're in the muck, so to speak.
yes. And when, again, this came out of thinking about your questions. Something that helps me stay grounded is I remind myself I'm only one part of my clients' lives,
Yeah.
and my job is only one part of my life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that helps with the work-life balance. It also helps with the ongoing humility of recognizing, I'm not a savior. I'm here to be responsible to my clients, to support them, hold the space for them.
Right.
But I'm not responsible for them, because that creates codependency enmeshment.
Yeah, and then just like kind of the maladaptive kind of relationship that we don't want.
Right.
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 Well, we
Especially if we're
try.
trying to help them heal from that with other
Right.
relationships in their lives. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point too, is how, just role modeling what a healthy relationship looks like. Um, that we could see. Yeah, because I've often had clients ask me, well, just tell me what to do. And I'm just like, yeah, I wish I could do that. But
Yep.
that's
Yep.
not my role, is to tell you what to do. That's what your parents do, and your friends,
Yes.
and your spouse, and everyone in your personal life. My role is not to tell you what to do. My role is to
Absolutely.
help you figure out what you want to do and what feels right for you. um,
And when you talk about lessons in the human professional balance, in that exact scenario you brought up, I've had clients ask me for that too. And it's understandable. They're in
yeah.
a really tough place. They're scared, about
Yes.
the future. We can all have fear around the future. And I remember one of my clients wasn't sure if she should break up with her partner or not. And I stood my ground in terms of not telling her what she should do. And it frustrated her. She wanted me to tell her what was right. And I don't blame her for that. And I remember I consulted with one of my coworkers who worked in crisis after the session. And he said, Matt, something I've learned to do in those moments with my clients is let them know no matter what you decide to do, I'm going to be here to support you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
That really helps because, like I said, fear around the future. Um, I actually just read this meme recently was, we're not scared of the future, we're just anxious about repeating the past.
Yeah, that's so true. So
Yeah.
true. Yeah, a lot of us just don't want the same kind of lessons or situations or encounters that we are trying to heal from or stay away from, or recognize that, yeah, okay, this is not healthy for me, and yet I keep finding them. Why is that? Kind of a thing, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And it's like, well,
Yep.
let's take a look
Happens to
at
all of
that.
us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And sometimes you have no control over that. I mean, it's not, I mean, I know in the counseling field, we talk about how sometimes those patterns come up because it usually is an indicator that there is some issue that needs to be kind of looked at, that it might be a signal for you to, maybe there's something going on, that, there's some issue that needs to be resolved that you haven't healed from yet. And I
Mhm.
oftentimes, might talk about that with clients, like, well, let's take a look, in your history and see what's going on if there's a pattern here. but sometimes it's like, well, sometimes these are just random things that, I don't know, maybe it's to show you how strong you really are, that
Hmm.
you can and practice all these new skills that you've learned and see how far you've actually come instead of focusing on, the negative aspect of it. And, so yeah, anyways, yeah, that's really important. I really appreciate that too, because it's, recognizing too that it's a non-judgmental space,
Yes.
and regardless of whatever decision you make. And, that's something that I think is important because, like what you mentioned, that kind of balance is I've had clients too that, will often be like, well, what you think about me matters. And I will tell them, I get that, because you trust me and you value, the relationship. And, we've worked together for a while. And, and obviously, there is this kind of trust in the relationship and the process and everything that we've done together. And at the same time, I tell them, it's not about what I think of you, because, the goal is you feeling better and good about yourself. Um,
Yes.
that's what it's about. I mean, doesn't matter what I think because I'm not you. So, um,
Right.
and I'm not living your life. So it's
And
hard.
there's an element of balance there too, because
Yeah,
it's like we all deserve the support network. That's one of the best ways, again, talking about the human professional balance,
yeah,
work-life balance, whether it's having a peer consultation group or a bowling league. I don't care what it is, whatever gives you joy, right? Whatever
right.
helps you not feel alone in what you're doing. But also, what was it? Oh, now I lost my train of thought. What was you were talking about? Oh, the non-judgmental space and um oh yeah, that was something else that one of my other teachers taught me back in the day was, what he wants for his clients is to feel like no matter what anyone around you is saying, thinking, feeling, or doing, you're going to be okay.
Yeah,
Because even the most supportive people in our lives are going to have their own opinions.
right.
And it's really easy. I think part of adulting is learning to make your own decisions, even if the people in your life don't always agree with you, and learning from your mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that sometimes, you are going to be going against the grain.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, if you feel solid in yourself with that, that it's like a whole and complete authenticity that
Mhm.
you have, that's really the point of it is that it's not driven by insecurities or fear or doubt kind of a thing. I think that's what a lot of people aspire to. And that's such a challenge to get to because of so much stigma and, conditions that we're all susceptible to. And, so it is finding that balance and whatnot. And, I'm curious if because when you and I had talked, I got the sense that you've kind of evolved into that, that whole and um, feeling complete. And, like there are, struggles we all have as well, of course. And, but recognizing that there is this kind of inner peace sense, so to speak, that comes with that. Um, so I'm curious, like how, kind of leading into the next piece of this, I didn't mean to use that word twice in a different way, but yeah, anyway. So, like, how do you like, how do I want to say this? How is it that you work that in your own life, balance that out as a human being and a professional, and then also kind of relate that with clients? That there's this kind of duality to it, right? And it's also non-dual at the same time. It's like, how do you, how do you do that?
You know, one of the first things I think of when you ask that question is I was working in hospice social work at the time, and I went to do a home visit, and I was meeting with the family of the loved one who was at end of life. And they asked me, Matt, how do you take care of yourself?
Mm,
How do you take care of yourself while you're doing this job? And I said, I go home at the end of the day, I turn my computer off, I go for a run on the lake, I watch one of my favorite TV shows. I read, very basic, down to earth things. And so, I was trained to use self-disclosure very rarely with my
Mm,
clients because one of my teachers taught me the more of us there is in the room, the less room there is for the client.
yeah,
But I think it is helpful for clients to see that human part of us,
right.
to know that we're not just talking at them because we read something in a book, but that we can empathize with them on certain levels.
Mhm.
And so I use that, but carefully and respectfully. And I think by having that transparency sometimes, that's one answer to your question is practicing that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Is just sharing that, I'm human too and struggle just like you do. That
Mm,
just because I do this work, it doesn't immune me from, all the other kind of struggles that people have.
mhm.
That in fact it make me more vulnerable to some of that even
Yeah,
because of that.
sure.
Yeah, that's very yeah, because I was trained the same way as not to self-disclose. And like you, I have found that sometimes it's very important to be transparent, and just let them know that, yes, these are things that I struggle with. And and yet at the same time, I have my own way of maintaining balance and ensuring that I'm held accountable, and not doing things that may lead me back to a destructive path or
Mm,
send me off the path or whatever the case may be. um, and I think that's important. People like to hear that. I've gotten, like when my students even, they're just like, well, if you're transparent, I'm going to be transparent. And I'm like, oh, okay. Are you saying you would not have been honest with me unless that kind of it. So I think it also sets kind of an example too.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely,
And it
definitely.
sounds like you've seen that too as well. Okay.
Absolutely.
So how would you define what spirituality looks like to you? I mean, that's part of this other pendulum. I love the way that you said that, the reality, the real stuff that you do to ground you in the world, like watching your favorite TV show. That I love the way that you worded that, because that's so part of this, the reality of it is this is what I do in the real world,
Mhm.
take a run by the lake, watch a TV show, that kind of a thing, turn off the computer. So how do you define the other part of that, the other side of it?
Um, I think I go back to because I thought about this question a lot too before I met with you, and I think I go back to just reminding myself that I'm part of something bigger,
Yeah.
and that not only helps me to stay humble, it helps me to feel safe
Mm,
because I've got colleagues like you, I've got peers that I can reach out to if I'm struggling with how to support a client the best way I can.
mhm.
Um, and I'm very lucky. I have a great family. I have a great network of friends. And just again, that's the spiritual piece for me. I've had my own personal religious and spiritual journey. Again,
Mhm.
that's not something I share with my clients because it's about them, not me. But that's something that I've learned along the way is that I've always benefited from being a team player in whatever setting I work in. I'm a good self-starter. I know that's valuable, but being part of a team, feeling like part of a family when you're doing hard work, emotionally challenging work is just the best thing to have.
Mhm. Yeah, and again, that goes back to, what you said before. It's that humility. It's that, being part of something bigger.
Mhm.
It's recognizing that, you're doing your part in this bigger scheme of things, so to speak. And that it's one part of it. I really like how you put that kind of puzzle together like that. Very nice. Well, I really appreciate you, sharing your thoughts with us. We got about a minute left, so I do want to just put up your contact information.
Oh, yes, please.
And I really like the name of your business, Defiant Growth. I love that. When I read it, I was like, oh, I like this. This is like rebel without a cause kind of a thing. Can
Thank you.
you describe a little bit about how you chose that?
So, I wanted the concept of us being able to choose to be better regardless of what else is happening around us or in our lives. you know, it goes back to that worthiness. You know,
Yeah.
we could easily let the negative, the anxious thoughts tell us that we don't deserve to get better, to feel better, to heal. And I like to think of it as, no, forget that. I'm going to get better anyway. I deserve to get better no matter what.
Yeah. It's like a 2-year-old being defiant.
That's
Like,
right. Yeah. And
right.
we learn, you know, we learned how to be resilient when we're kids, right? We learn how to
Right.
play and have a sense of humor and not take things so seriously. And we're like super brave when we're kids. And it's easy to
Yes.
forget that when we get older.
I totally agree with you. Well, Matt, thank you so much. And for those of you watching us on Facebook Live, thank you for joining us. And, you know, if you have questions or you want to get in contact with Matt, his contact information is there for you. And he does do telehealth, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And you can email him through his website or contact him at his phone number to ask him questions. And thank you so much again for, you know, answering those questions and sharing your thoughts. And I look forward to bringing you back on because I think we can have another really great discussion about some of these topics. So thank you again, Lori and Judy. Thank you for joining us this evening. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Very informative.
All right.
Thanks, Lori and Judy. And thank you so much, Serena, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.